Welcome to Planet People, a podcast that aims to inspire curiosity and cultivate a deeper connection with the natural world.
We are thrilled to be sharing stories with you that highlight the beauty and importance of protecting our planet's wildlife.
Be sure to follow us on social media and your favorite podcast streaming platform so that you never miss an episode.
Yo, yo, yo.
What's up, Planet People? We are so excited to be back with our Season 2 opener with Sendy Barrows today.
Sendy is such a incredible icon, like true desert defender, and her husband and their friend co-founded CactusToCloud, a nonprofit, and they do incredible work here in the desert.
And the CactusToCloud name, I just want to highlight how true that is to the desert region, because what makes it so special...
Hi! You're so cute! We have, for those that can't see, we have a cute little doggy.
This is
coming
Murphy.
in. Hi, baby. CactusToCloud is just like such a cool name. I love that name.
Well, it's such a great name because it really rings true to the desert, right? If you've ever been to Palm Desert, which is where their nonprofit is based out of, you can actually be at the desert floor and see cactus. And then when you go up the Palm Springs aerial tram, you can then be in snow on top of Mount San Jacinto. So CactusToCloud kind of references that. And then there's also a monument in the desert called Sand to Snow, which kind of refers to the same thing. So their name is so true to really what they're protecting and being these desert defenders.
And speaking of National Monument, they were able to designate Chuckwalla National Monument, and that's what we really break down today in our episode. Mm-hmm. And all of the action steps that they took to get that designated as a national monument, and that happened in January of this year. So
right before President Biden left office, Sendy Barrows, among other desert conservationists, attended this incredible designation, and they got to see President Biden sign this into law as a legitimate monument to be protected for so many important reasons that we really dive into in this episode. And so I'm so excited that the Chuckwalla National Monument was created. I remember making a reel about it.
It's awesome.
Spreading the good news. Like,
such a
this
full
is a big
moment.
deal.
Yeah.
So now we get to talk about it and interview Sendy.
And it's just like such a strong opener. Like,
yeah, it is.
To have something designated a national monument, this is years of work. And like, yeah, so let's get into it. We're here today sharing stewardship stories about desert conservation, and we are at the Joshua Tree recording studio. We're so excited to be here.
Today we have on a very special guest, Sendy Barrows, president of CactusToCloud. And Sendy, welcome to the show. We're so excited to share your story about desert conservation.
Yeah, hi, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today and talk to you guys more about our amazing desert and just what we're doing out here.
Thank you so much. So why don't you tell us a little bit about CactusToCloud and what the mission statement is and what you guys are doing today to advocate for the desert?
Yeah, so CactusToCloud Institute is a small nonprofit. We're based out of the Coachella Valley, and our goal is to help build climate resiliency for animal, plants, and people to thrive, and also build in that inclusivity so that they could explore their public lands.
It's incredible. So there's a lot at stake with desert conservation and desert lands right now. What does that look like for CactusToCloud, and what are some efforts that you guys are doing today to protect the desert?
Yeah, and thank you for talking about that, because it's, the deserts are often overlooked. And so regardless of anything that's going on in the exterior world of our desert, they are, always overlooked. So there is always that threat. Currently, right now, obviously, there's a change of administration, so we're having to tackle those challenges as well. So for us right now, one of the things that we are doing and will continue to be doing is advocating for the protection of our desert, advocating for our public lands, and advocating in general for solutions that help us address climate change. One of the reasons why we started CactusToCloud was specifically for that, so that we could have a platform without any red tape or any divisions or whatnot, so we could, start to advocate for the desert when we saw that there was a need for it.
The CactusToCloud Institute is a really beautiful example of what it means to be a desert conservation advocate. So how did your personal journey and growing up in the Coachella Valley translate into wanting to start Cactus to Cloud?
Yeah, so I think for myself, at least, I can't speak for other people, but at least for myself, some of my favorite childhood memories were out here in the desert. We didn't call it hiking back then, but that's exactly what we were doing. We thought we were running around in the hills, but we were hiking. And so for me, I don't think it should be controversial to try to protect the area where you live, because at the end, it benefits us all. So for us, it kind of was also a COVID project, if you will. COVID was a tricky spot, and we saw a lot of challenges in our area, but we also wanted to do something be positive. And so my husband and a friend of ours, we got together and we decided to start CactusToCloud Institute. And, we started off we still are a very small group, and we started just as a community group, if you will. And then, with time, we became a nonprofit organization.
Okay, so you're officially a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. And when did you get that status as a nonprofit?
2021.
2021. Nice.
Great.
It's so funny how COVID, the disaster that it did sort of birth out some beautiful projects and people realizing what's important to them. You have to stay home, and, it sounds like for you guys, you realize, we need to protect our home.
Right.
And so what does protecting the desert look like to you with Cactus to Cloud?
So it's a little bit of everything, I would say. I felt like one of the reasons why we started Cactus to Clouds was precisely because, at that time, there was a lot of challenges that were facing our desert, and not necessarily organizations speaking up. There were organizations, but they weren't speaking up, and, everyone has their reasons for what they do or they don't do. But we felt that it was very important for us, or at least for someone, to speak up. And so that's why, one of the reasons why we started Cactus to Clouds. And so that's a long way of saying that a lot of the stuff that we focus on is advocacy. So advocacy for the Coachella Valley, advocacy for, desert ecosystems in general. But it also, we know that this is a very involved work, and there's no such thing as like one miracle worker or one person to take on the whole challenges. So for us, helping bring in the next generation, helping continue to build that interest within our community was also very important. And so that's why we also incorporate an educational component to our work, so that we are bringing new voices. And, for the most part, also wanting to focus on those voices that have been traditionally excluded from conservation in the past.
Absolutely. So in terms of the education element to your nonprofit, what does that look like exactly? Do you, do you go to local schools, or do you hold events for the younger generation? How does that play out?
Yeah, so we host, public events. They're open to the public. They're free. All they have to do is sign up. Obviously, if they're a minor, they would have to come with a parent or whatnot. But we try to, break down and not, make it accessible, the information accessible for everyone to understand, whether we're doing a hike or a talk. We're very excited because we got invited to talk to a high school later on this month. So we're really looking forward to speaking to some of the youth. In addition to that, and my husband should take more credit on this program than I should, but, one of the reasons why we put together the Nuestro Desierto program, which is the California Naturalist Certification opportunity that offers youth here in the Coachella Valley, was precisely for that. So we wanted to provide community members with the basic conservation knowledge for them to start on their way to their conservation journey. So it's an interesting program. We ran it for 3 years. We're taking a break right now and see where it goes later. But generally speaking, what that was, we introduced them to some of the core subjects, took them to research labs, took them to different natural areas within the community, just so that they got to know more about the desert and, again, trying to build in that love for our community as well.
That's so cool.
I love that you mentioned community so much, and how education with the younger generation is such an important element of your mission with Cactus to Cloud. So how do you feel that community can really give back to the environment when you bring in those younger folks in all walks of life? What does that look like for protecting the environment?
I think a lot of it looks like, you know, having those people feel welcome in this space. I unfortunately, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people that, you know, would be interested, but they haven't, you know, been provided the opportunity, or they haven't felt welcome in these spaces. I know for me, that definitely was the case when I first started. And so that's why, you know, I try to make it a priority to make sure that we're bringing in new voices and creating that safe and welcoming space. And so the way that looks like is, you know, I mean, for starters, they're younger, so they have a lot more energy than we do, right? They're a lot more savvy on social media. So a lot of it is, you know, them being like, hey, you know, this is something I could do. And, you know, these are really smart young people, and they're passionate. And so it's really nice to see how their passion and their interest for the desert develops their own advocacy avenues for them.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for welcoming those voices that might otherwise feel unwelcome in this space.
Yeah,
it's sort of like what you were saying about how a lot of life in the desert is overlooked. Well, some voices are also overlooked. And if we don't offer different perspectives from all walks of life, then we're really missing all of these elements that could help with the bigger picture of climate resiliency and desert protection. And so who are some of these voices that you're trying to include? What kind of Indigenous knowledge are you able to bring into this organization and bring that back to conservation?
Yeah, so none of us are a registered member of the tribe, and we definitely always try to be very respectful of our tribal neighbors and friends. And so for that reason, what we do to provide that information for students, and what we have done in the past, is invite some of our colleagues that are tribal members that do have that traditional ecological knowledge. And you know, again, building in that whole equity piece, like, we pay for their time, and we invite them, and we give them their space and their time to talk about. We basically tell them, you know, here's the class, share what you feel is important to you. And I think, you know, when talking about voices that have been traditionally excluded, it's always good to also provide them the platform instead of trying to speak for them. And so for us, you know, it's really important to make sure that we are including our tribal friends and colleagues so that they could speak for themselves.
And what are some of these messages that tribal leaders are sharing with, you know, these community events you're hosting or educational outreach? How does that play out?
Yeah, I think it's really, at least for me, and I think from what I've heard from some of the other people, for them, it's like really interesting and really helpful to see their perspective and how, you know, and for them, nature is everything interconnected, because that's definitely something that we believe in. You know, like, I know some people might think things are disconnected, but what happens, you know, like, oh, something's happening over here, but it doesn't affect me. But that's not really true. You know, we all know that everything's connected, and, you know, the environment doesn't see imaginary lines.
That's beautiful.
I love that. Every
individual has a role to play here. And it's so important to bring all those individuals in and gather them into your network and see what a difference they can make. And it's great that you are able to do that. So with that being said, how do you see the intersection of traditional ecological knowledge with scientific ecological knowledge to bridge conservation solutions based on these differing perspectives, where one is more so objectifying the environment, whereas I feel Indigenous knowledge brings that subjectivity into every being and thing on the landscape? So where does that cross in terms of, you know, desert protections in your experience?
I think it's definitely, a lot of it is starting to build those relationships, you know, and starting to have those initial discussions so that people do feel comfortable in sharing that traditional ecological knowledge. And I think, you know, science is really important, and as well as traditional ecological knowledge. And it's just a matter of finding that balance and being respectful of each other's perspective. So that, I mean, because if you look at both of them, they are working towards the same solution. It's just trying to find that middle ground and delicate balance. But I think a lot of it, like I said, is starting to have those initial conversations, starting to rebuild those relationships, because as we know, Indigenous people haven't always been treated so nice.
No.
And so, you know, it's understandable that they might not want to open right away. Yeah. You know, we're very fortunate that we that we have colleagues and people we call friends who are, native, and maybe that's where that trust comes from. But I could also understand if maybe I try to approach someone else who's a tribal member and they might be a little bit hesitant in the beginning because they don't know me, right? And that's totally understandable.
Yeah, absolutely. And they are the original stewards of these lands. And I think that there's a lot to learn. In these events that you host, what are some fun facts or things that they share that might not be just otherwise known? Have you found anything that's like, in terms of stewarding the desert terrain? Is there anything that maybe you can share with listeners that they can put into their practice if they live in the desert, or even if they're visiting the desert, and to leave the space respectfully?
Yeah, I think a simple one is like if you were able to carry something in, you could carry it out. Absolutely. And that goes for even stuff that's organic, because I sometimes find like orange peels and it's like, yeah, it's organic, but that doesn't mean you should be leaving your trash behind. So I think a very simple one to understand, to remember is like if you pack something in, you should be able to pack it out. We, when we do our guided events, we don't do it with any tribal representatives. So I should probably make that clarification. I don't want to speak for them. But that's definitely something that when we do our events, we try to encourage whoever is attending, like, hey, let's be respectful, let's be mindful, and let's make sure that we leave this a better place than we found it. And so for that reason, we try to discourage people from, or encourage them, I should say, to, speak to their family and friends about what they're seeing and what they could do and changes that they could take on.
I like that you said, leave it better than you found it, instead of just leave it how you found it.
Yeah.
Love that.
Thank you.
Leave no trace policies are so important, and that's something that came up in our more recent discussion with Alex Wild. And he was saying that it really comes back to compassion with the land. That's understanding that you have to respect it and leave it better than you found it. Leave nothing but your footsteps. So what are some successes and ongoing challenges that you are currently facing with Cactus to Cloud in terms of your conservation projects and your desert defender work?
Yeah, so, you might have heard of the designation of Chuckwalla National Monument that took place towards the end of the Biden administration in January. And, we are still very happy and very proud of all the work that went into it, because, they might say it was happened with the stroke of a pen, but I could tell you it didn't. It's something that took years. And so right now, that's definitely one of the focus areas. There's a lot of uncertainty out there, but we remain committed to making sure that that area remains protected. In addition to that, like I said, the deserts have always been underrepresented, underappreciated and understood and misunderstood. So for us, continue to advocate not just for our desert ecosystem, but all deserts in California is very important as well.
And how does that Chuckwalla designation provide climate resilience for the Mojave Desert, for the Coachella Valley? Why is it important to protect?
Yeah, so the Chuckwalla National Monument, which spans from the Mecca Hills to give or take about 10 miles of the Colorado River, is within the Colorado Desert. And the Coachella Valley is a really unique spot because we're in the middle of a couple of crossroads between us and the high desert. And so the way I see it is, and actually the fact is that the Chuckwalla National Monument provides wildlife corridors for wildlife that might need to migrate in order to adapt to climate change, from our area up to the high desert. It also is, again, going back to the fact that deserts are misunderstood and underappreciated, carbon sequestration is really important in order to help us fight climate change. And it's a natural process that's already happening without us having to do anything. We don't have to pay for it. All we have to do is protect it. I know money's a big thing. So yeah, no one has to pay for it. We just have to make sure it's protected. And what data shows is that deserts are actually a carbon sink, and a very strong carbon sink. And so within the Chuckwalla National Monument, we have these swaths or big sections of land that have been undisturbed and that are doing exactly just that. And so making sure that those areas are undisturbed is going to in turn help us continue to fight climate change as we know it's happening, and so we should be doing everything that we can. And in addition to that, I feel like, again, just putting in that whole human component, it's also an avenue for, for community members to go out and explore the public lands and enjoy the physical and mental health benefits that come along with it.
Beautifully said. And I think there's the point about deserts being a carbon sink is such a pivotal key thing to come back to as we continue to face threats from climate change, and protecting land is the best way to fight it so we can have that natural carbon sequestration process. And it's that cryptobiotic soil, that soil crust layer on the desert floor that soaks up the carbon or fossil fuels really from the atmosphere and helps us to fight climate change. And the best way to do that, like you said, is to protect swaths of land.
I actually had no idea that the desert was considered a carbon sink.
Yeah, and it's, and you wouldn't be alone in saying that, because of the fact that deserts, again, it's the last thing that people think about, and of course we do have carbon sinks in the forest and in the ocean, but, I think, it's really important to continue to highlight that so that people don't just say like, oh, what are they protecting out there? There's nothing. And the thing is that there's a lot of stuff out there, including
there's a lot
carbon
of
sinks.
Diversity.
It's a total misconception that the desert is a wasteland. People say that to me, and it couldn't be further from the truth. There's so much biodiversity, and you mentioned the importance of protecting the Chuckwalla National Monument and continuing to make sure that it remains a national monument for to act as a wildlife corridor. So what kind of wildlife are we seeing come through these lands?
Yeah, so we see sheep, we see desert tortoise, we see kit foxes. There's just a wide range of different animals. And, one of the other things that sometimes people might not think about is like the fact that it also provides a really nice rest stop for all of the migratory birds. They're on this really long journey. They definitely need a break somewhere in between. And, Chuckwalla National Monument is a place where they could do that.
What kind of birds do you see come through there?
I'm not a birder. Yeah, I'm not a birder. They're really nice. But they're, one of the very iconic animals that I think a lot of people sometimes you might recognize it if they see it, if they hear it, I should say, is a red-tailed hawk, because that's kind of like the sound that they use in the movies for the eagle, but it's actually a red-tailed hawk. So yeah, there's definitely that, but there's also even out in the middle of the wilderness, out when you could be out by yourself, there's also a lot of different bees, different hummingbirds, and so it's really nice to just see that as well, especially in the mornings. Earlier in the morning, you're probably going to see some swallows just kind of like diving in and out. As the sun starts to set, you'll probably see a couple of bats as well.
What would you say your favorite wildlife animal is in the Chuckwalla National Monument?
Chuckwallas are very unique. Yeah, I think they're very, very unique and very interesting creatures in the sense that they're perfectly adapted for the extremes of our desert, and that's a way of me trying not to answer your question, because I don't really have a favorite, because I think they all have their they're all very special in their own very way. But I think the Chuckwalla lizard is very emblematic of our desert in the sense that it has, everything it needs basically to be perfectly adapted to the extremes of our desert, and I think it's really cool that it could, blow up its little skin and wedge themselves to protect themselves from predator. And, I think they're really resilient in the sense that they basically take their liquids or their water from their food. Whereas like us, we have to actually have constant water to continue to survive.
That's an incredible adaptation that's just evolved over generations of trying to survive in the desert. There's so much amazing wildlife in the desert, and as a tortoise biologist, I work with them pretty regularly, and they have a similar adaptation where they have to retain their water supply and gather it from plants, and then if there's, a shallow pool of water somewhere, then they can to intake that water through their nares, their nostrils. But they, similar to the Chuckwalla, also get a lot of their water from eating things like beaver tail or globe mallow. There's not that much water in the plant, but enough for them to retain it and recycle that water through their semi-permeable bladder. This is one of their most interesting physiological feats, is that ability to basically direct water to different organs in their body depending on when they need it most. And it's incredible, these animals, how they've learned to survive in the desert. I think it's a great example of how we can learn from them to live off of just what we need. Right?
Yeah, that's a really nice way to put it.
And the desert teaches you that. You have to learn to adapt to survive in the harsh and unforgiving landscape, but there's sort of a softness to it, right? It's that silence that invites you in, and it keeps you coming back because you get to just appreciate the land for what it is. And maybe you'll see a tortoise, or last week I saw a golden eagle, and there are cool prairie falcons, nighthawks, and it's beautiful to see. It's not often maybe that you'll see these animals surface from their burrows in the heat of the day, but right now is a great time to be out in the desert because, it's tortoise season is right now. They're resurfacing from brumation during the winter, and it's going to get hot in the summer as it always does.
Yeah.
So get out there and enjoy it now is a good message. And it's amazing that Chuckwalla can bring that community element in too and provide those public lands for people.
Well, we appreciate you being a desert defender and
Thank you.
Providing that land and protecting that land for the animals and everyone that lives here to, still appreciate it, be able to go out there and connect with the wildlife, and it's healing for people, and it's
for sure.
It's important that we keep these lands protected, not only for climate change, but for people to enjoy and for wildlife to keep their habitat. So we appreciate all the work that you've been doing. Can we hear your journey of how you were able to
get that designation for Chuckwalla? That seemed like there was so much legwork. You said it took years to get to this point. Tell us a little bit about what that looked like.
Yeah, it would definitely, and I'm glad to provide that you have that opportunity to provide that answer because, often designations are, taken for granted or, again, misunderstood. But this has been a process that lasted years. And so a lot of it, again, went back to those relationship building, having initial conversations. So, we definitely wanted to earn the support from as many people as possible. And so that took some while, and it took a lot of conversations. And so for us, or for me in particular, it was definitely talking to everyday people. But at times I was also talking to some of the elected officials or to some of our partners, talking to the media, just basically talking to whoever would listen. And so, the good thing about our coalition is that, we're pretty diverse in the sense that there's local, regional, and national partners. And so we're able to leverage each other's strengths in order to achieve our goals. And so we were successful in obtaining, written support from 7 local tribes, from from the cities of the Coachella Valley, with the exception of Coachella, but we're still working on that one.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that's a whole other story. But another important thing, and I think as it relates to climate and nature and, public lands, one thing that I always like to mention is that it also has bipartisan support. So last year, the California legislature passed a Senate resolution, and which gave us that bipartisan support where, both Democrats and Republicans were asking for this designation. And this was, again, not something I heard, but something that I actually got to witness and participate in myself. Because, again, going back to things that, like we were talking earlier about, what this took. It took, basically, Senator Steve Padilla introduced Senate Joint Resolution 16. And myself and one other person were called to testify, and then that, and so we followed whatever procedure was in place for that, and that was approved and passed by both Democrats and Republicans last year. In addition to that, we gained so much support from the different industries, from community members and whatnot, that Chuckwalla became this thing that was, that needed to be paid attention to. And so there was actually a listening session that was hosted last year by our previous Secretary of the Department of the Interior, Ms. Deb Holland. And so she was here and she hosted that listening session. It was basically an all-day event. And I'm really glad that they dedicated the whole morning to just, the tribal perspective and giving them their space. And then the afternoon, myself and some other people got to participate and just tell her just how much the desert meant to us. And so that was really, really nice, and a very unique opportunity to kind of like continue to elevate the importance of the desert. But I think even more so, one moment that I'm particularly proud of, I would say, was the public meeting that was hosted by the BLM in the summer. So if you ever visit us in the summer, we get kind of toasty, right? Yeah. It's a little bit toasty. You definitely won't get your tan. And they decided to host this meeting in the middle of the summer. It was a Friday. It was about 120 degrees outside.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So just a little bit warm, and that definitely didn't stop people. There is this massive line that wrapped around the whole building of people just waiting in line so that they could get into the building, so that they could hopefully, you get a chance to speak on behalf of the National Monument or express why they were supporting the designation. And, in meetings afterwards, and talking with BLM and their staff, they told me that it was actually one of the biggest meetings that they've ever hosted.
Wow.
I believe, yeah, thank you. And more than 85% of the people that were there in support of the National Monument designation.
Wow.
What a beautiful story.
Yeah.
And a core memory for the whole process.
Oh, yeah. It was definitely something that I think showed just the strength and the power that comes along with working together as a community instead of working against each other.
Absolutely.
Especially bringing in bipartisan, both Republican and Democrat. That I'm shocked to hear just because of the division we see today. But that's beautiful. You were able to bring in all walks of life. And the BLM meeting sounded like a huge success.
Yeah, we were very happy.
And with the BLM meeting, how did that aid into the ultimate protection and what is it called? Designation. So can we break that down a bit? Like,
yeah,
if something is designated, then is that like the ultimate status or, sorry, I'm a little...
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. I think I might have skipped over that when I was like, oh yeah, public meeting. So there's two tracks to designate a national monument, right? And here in the Coachella Valley, we see that in our landscape. And so one of them would be, if Congress does their work and does their job, it would be congressionally designated. And that was the first approach that we had. We definitely had that, and we were following that path, and we had a congressional champion that was introducing legislation. But, at a certain point, we realized that we needed to move a little bit faster. And so, or not a little bit faster, but we needed to, just make sure we covered both bases. And so then that's why we proceeded with the other track, which was the use of the Antiquities Act. And the use of the Antiquities Act is something that has been widely used and equally used by both Democrat and Republican presidents since it was enacted. So it's not something that is just one party doing it or just the Democrats doing it. No, I think it's something that's completely bipartisan, and history shows that. And so here in the Coachella Valley, just for your reference, like we have a little bit of both, I would say. So we have the Santa Rosa and San Jacinto Mountains National Monument, and that was congressionally designated. But we also have Santo Snow here. which was designated by President Barack Obama. So that was through the Antiquities Act. And now we have Chuckwalla National Monument, which again, through the Antiquities Act by President Biden. And then one other thing that I also like to mention is that, you know, the designation of national monuments is also very important, because at times that has proven to show that it goes on to protect some of these landscapes or some of these areas that people have on their bucket list. These are areas that people want to go. Like, for example, Joshua Tree National Park was at one point a national monument.
Oh, okay.
The Grand Canyon was at one point a national monument.
Oh, so it's kind of like the track to become a park almost.
If that's the decision that the agency wants to go, yeah, it's definitely a way that they could do it.
Wow, okay. I didn't know that.
Thank you for
enlightening
breaking
me.
that down. Then there's the Santa Snow. Is that also a national monument?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that was kind of recently designated as well in the last few years, right?
Correct.
Did you guys have any involvement in that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, it's an area that we work in, and we sometimes do activities there, but we can't take credit for that work. But yeah, we're really happy that actually did happen, because it does protect, you know, again, a really important ecosystem as well within our community.
Absolutely. And just to kind of describe a little bit more, I feel like, what is Chuckwalla National Monument? Like, it's a, you know, you said 10 miles of land, and it's south of Joshua Tree. I feel like we should just try to create a picture of what it is.
Yeah. So, well, the thing is, like, Chuckwalla National Monument is a lot of things to a lot of different people. It's you know, it's significantly big. But you know, you go from seeing the Mecca Hills, which has some of the youngest and some of the oldest rocks, and you have like these towering hillsides that just kind of make you feel really small, but also puts things into perspective. And you know, then you know, you keep on going. There's additional mountain ranges, additional areas that are just like, you could feel and enjoy the solitude, whether you're out backpacking or you're on one of the designated and authorized legal routes. But there's a little bit of everything for everyone out there. Whether you like looking at oases, you know, for example, if you're a desert tortoise biologist, so I could definitely see you out there, you know, out on the Chuckwalla Bench, just kind of like keeping an eye out for desert tortoises, right? And so it's just a very unique area. House or geobeds is actually out there as well. So, you know, if you see those little crystals in the ground, that's probably what you're looking at.
Yeah.
And it's a really nice area, I think, just personally, just to, you know, enjoy and kind of like have that reestablishment with nature. And you know, and a really good opportunity for people to be able to recreate without having to spend a lot or having to go on this really long road trip or whatnot, because it's something that's right here. So it's, you know, but I'm sure that if you talk to some of the community members who may be a veteran or may be the family of a veteran, for them it might look a little bit different, right? So for them it might be, oh, you know, it's historically important, and it is. And so I don't remember the exact number, but about 10% of the troops that were sent over, I want to say, to fight during the World War II were actually trained here in the Chuckwalla National Monument.
Wow.
So there's these really unique areas that you could still visit. And so maybe for them, that's what's important, right? But again, going back and talking to about the importance of the landscape, both culturally and historically, I'm sure that if you talk to one of the local tribes, they might tell you, you know, just a completely different story of what it means to them as, you know, both culturally, spiritually, and historically for them and their people.
It's a beautiful way of bringing in all of these different perspectives for all the people that come to this land for different reasons, whether it's historically, culturally, just for recreational needs. And that kind of brings in this, again, the social ecological element, right? How are we interacting with the landscape? What is our kind of what's drawing us here, right? And that historical component about World War II is really interesting too, because I've actually done tortoise surveys down by Chiriaco Summit, And they have, is there the World War II museum there, or?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it is the World War II museum. It's really cool. Yeah. And they had, these huge tanks on the landscape at one point, which, it's interesting to see the different use and meaning of Chiriaco Summit and Chuckwalla now. And so just coming back to that designation process, what were those final steps after you had that BLM meeting? What was next?
Yeah, so for us, I think continue to seek that support from community members is something that will continue to be ongoing. But on the governmental side, for them, they also had to do their due diligence. So for us, it was like, okay, we did our part. We're waiting for the next steps to hear from the administration and from them. And then once they got through their process, in their internal process, then that's when we got a very short notice about some exciting news happening, and that was earlier in January, when we basically got the good news that he was going to sign the designation. And unfortunately, that original trip would have been really marvelous and great, because I don't think we've ever had an actual sitting president or even a previous president visit the Mecca Hills, and that's originally where the ceremony was going to take place. But of course, there was some other stuff going on. That's when the LA fires took place, and then the Santa Ana winds just like really kicked up that day and made things a little bit difficult. So unfortunately, that got postponed. But we still knew that it was coming. And so, shortly afterwards, that's when we received a second invitation. And at the time, we knew that, the designation ceremony was still going to take place somewhere, somehow. But we just didn't know what that was going to look like. And so I think, I don't want to speak for all of my colleagues, but I think a lot of us were definitely very surprised when we got that email.
And who was the email from?
The email was from the White House. Yeah, the email was from the White House, and with a really nice formal invitation saying how we were invited to visit the White House, and how it was the official ceremony for the designation.
Wow.
And so it was definitely a lot of wow. And I remember it was like, oh, you need to fill out this form, and all the security checks that they have to do. And I didn't even stop to think like, oh, maybe this could be a spam email. I was like, oh, yeah, here you go. I was just like filling it out completely.
Well, thank God it wasn't.
Yeah, thank God it wasn't, because I definitely did give them information. But and I think it was like really exciting, just to kind of like see the culmination of years of work from everyone, and kind of like see this as as I would say an obstacle that was overcome, right? And a really big goal for us that was achieved.
It's amazing.
Congratulations.
Yeah, huge congrats. That's
hearing
incredible.
from the White House, what a great story and journey.
For sure. Yeah, it was definitely a very, I think once in a lifetime kind of moment. I think for me personally, as an immigrant and a person of color, it's not something that I would have ever even dreamed of happening. So it's definitely something I would say a highlight, not just of my work, but I think a highlight in general.
Of life.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful accomplishment. So when did you go to the White House for the ceremony?
We went in January. The ceremony actually took place on the 14th, but we flew in, I believe, the day before. So it was still a little bit cold. There was still snow, and as true desert people, we didn't have any winter wear, so we had to the few days before, as soon as we got the invitation, we were trying to find some winter coats and whatnot, and unfortunately we did, but it was still very cold. Definitely not what we're used to, but
I didn't even think about that part of it.
Yeah,
that's why we love the desert. We have the sunshine.
now I have
here.
a winter coat, I guess, but but yeah, no, it was really, really nice. Just the White House from the inside is just like this immaculate, like very historic, of course, right? But just seeing what they have inside was like very, very eye-opening.
And when that was happening and you were inside the White House, did you see Biden sign the document?
We were in the room.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why to me it's like so mind-blowing. Like we were in the room with the president. Sure, we weren't like within arm's length. But so it was this really nice, beautiful room. And there was 3 sections of seats and whatnot. And of course, a lot of cameras. But we were probably like within 20 feet or so
of President Biden.
And
That's
so that in itself was
crazy.
just like pictures, videos. Yeah, everyone was definitely, very excited. And, not just us, but I think everyone, all of our colleagues were just like taking pictures the whole time.
Yeah.
Just because, how exciting it was. So, it was definitely, I think it made it even more memorable to not just hear about it, but also like see him actually do the signing.
And Deb Holland was right by his side.
Deb Holland was right there, yes.
Did you get a photo with Deb?
Oh, I had a photo from her from earlier last summer when she hosted the listening session. Yeah, and then she actually was here in the Valley as well. Yeah, I definitely took every opportunity to take a picture. I guess, but yeah, she was also here originally for the first ceremony, and so we got to talk to her for a few minutes, so that was nice.
That's incredible. Yeah. She's an iconic,
she's a wonderful
historic
person.
I was so happy when Biden appointed her to the DOI.
Yeah, I think she definitely brought upon some really good changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And hopefully we can just keep that momentum going despite, the current administration. We can still act locally, and communities act faster than federal government. There's no doubt there. I mean, we definitely need that input and from, local, regional, tribal, federal, all of these groups working together. But it's great that you got recognition and got to go to the White House and meet Deb. And that's just an incredible story. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. So what is your nonprofit in Cactus to Cloud and all the work that you guys are doing to come to this point? What does it look like now with everything going on? Are you filling out paperwork to essentially keep this designation, or what are those steps that you're seeing now and making sure that this is continued to be protected?
Yeah, so we're definitely in a defense position now. I think that's safe to say. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's nothing for sure. But, rumors are that there is some inclination that they might want to remove protections or change the existing protections. And so for us, it's definitely continue to advocate, continue to have those conversations with local elected leaders and continue to elevate just how important this is. And so as part of our work, in advocating for all of the deserts, we're part of all of the deserts of California. We're part of this this group or this coalition that is working specifically in all of the desert ecosystems or desert regions to help achieve what are the 30 by 30 goals. And so a simple way to summarize 30 by 30 is that it's this initiative. It's actually a world initiative where a lot of countries have already participated, and California has its own plan of how it plans to protect 30% of land and 30% of coastal waters by the year 2030. And so as part of that work, last month we were actually in Sacramento and met with different legislators to continue to, continue to advocate for 30 by 30 for funding and for, ongoing and sustained protections of what we already have in our public lands, but also to continue to ask for their support for Chuckwalla National Monument.
And the Chuckwalla contributes to the 30 by 30 goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard recently that the 30 by 30 is also under threat. That goal is kind of being, removed from White House website. I wanted to know if it's still a discussion in California and that's still a goal in this state, because I think nationwide it might not be.
Yeah, so, again, there's a lot of uncertainty, but there's also a lot of dedicated individuals. And I think that's what's really helpful right now in these moments, that, that whoever is interested in this continues to work together and continue to elevate the importance of conservation, not just of the desert, but of every ecosystem within California. I think at the end of the day, for for anyone, it should be quite clear why we want to protect nature. Why wouldn't you want to protect the place you live? I mean, it's as simple as that to me. You would definitely want to protect the place you live. You don't want to trash it. You don't want to damage it, because at the end it affects you. So I think for the state of California, and I'm not a governmental representative or anything, but I think at least in California, we can feel confident that at least 30 by 30 and conservation goals will continue at some level. Of course, there's certain things that may slow down and certain things that might look a little bit different, but I think it's still going to continue to be a priority.
That's great.
So we're going to take a second to do a bird's eye view. Something that we've referenced a lot in this episode is 30 by 30.
Yeah, so the 30 by 30 plan is a huge effort to protect 30% of Earth's surface from lands to oceans. And right now, only about 15% of Earth's surface is protected. And so it will take a lot of advocacy effort to get that 15% up to 30%. And we are seeing actions being taken to prevent things like deep sea mining and the public land grab this year that we were seeing by the federal government under the big bullshit bill. I'm not even going to call it the big beautiful bill. And so we are seeing wins happen with trying to protect what we already have protected, but it's about protecting what's
raising those numbers,
right?
Yeah.
So 30 by 30 plan is a very common phrase right now.
30% by 2030.
Yes.
And we're at, you said 15%?
Yes.
Okay, so we got 15% to go. I think only less than 3% of oceans are protected, which is insane. So hopefully we could get those numbers up as well.
Absolutely, and we have a lot of laws and acts in place that I think are important to talk about too, that go into protecting our landscapes and our oceans.
So what exactly is the Antiquities Act, and what exactly does it cover?
The Antiquities Act was passed in 1906 by President Roosevelt, and this empowers presidents to set aside public lands, national monuments, national parks, whatever it may be. This gives them the power to designate land. And it's such a remarkable act because we have seen so many national monuments turn into national parks, basically. In the 1990s, Joshua Tree was just a national monument. And the Antiquities Act allows for that enforcement of it, having more regulation. I think these bird's eye view segments are perfect for breaking down the 30 by 30 and the Antiquities Act, because it's so important that we're setting aside Chuckwalla National Monument to basically support the 30 by 30. And without the Antiquities Act, we wouldn't be able to have the Chuckwalla National Monument to support the 30 by 30. So it's like all of these things, these historical measures that have taken place here in 1906 with the Antiquities Act, and now the 30 by 30, which is a modern day conservation movement. And so it's really about protecting large swaths of undisturbed land that's not disturbed by off-road vehicles, OHV stuff, utility development, anything. When we can really just save a whole landscape, that can help us fight climate change. When we can save a creosote, when we can prevent the desert soil from being eroded by OHV trails, then we can really support the 30 by 30 effort.
Thanks for taking this bird's eye view with us.
When we can come back to that community conservation element and work together on both sides of political parties, regardless of your views, and you just want to protect your home. Planet Earth is our home. We are part of nature, so we need to protect it to protect ourselves. And unfortunately, sometimes I think you have to kind of bring that element of the individual into it a little bit, because people want to know why it's important to them too. And so coming back to that connection with the land and coming back to it being your home and understanding the importance of it for protecting it for climate resilience too. It all comes back to that. So
I think also starting locally is just a wonderful point, because right now it's really overwhelming. You know, there's headline after headline after headline. Not only is your home under attack, but, you know, somewhere across the world is also under attack, whether it be, civilian-based or climate change. You hear about natural disasters all the time, but I think it can be extremely overwhelming for people. And I think you guys are a wonderful example of just starting where you live. Just defend this area of where you're living, where you're passionate about, and the area that you recreate and that you enjoy, I think is a wonderful place to start, and it's needed all around. So I think that's a wonderful message.
Yeah, thank you. I think again, it's nature, in my opinion, is bipartisan. I'm sure regardless of political lines, everyone has a core memory or a treasure memory of them being out, I don't know, at a lake, in a river, at a park, at a national monument, going on road trips with their family. These are places, again, that where people have on their bucket list, and people, make it a point to visit. And so, and I keep on going back to bucket lists, because I know for some people they're like, oh well, it's just the desert. Oh well, it's just a forest. What matters? And sure, if they don't want to care about nature, that's their mistake, I would say. But I think, attacking public lands is definitely a really negative thing for any community, not just from a health and conservation perspective, but also from an economical perspective. And, we know some people that's all they care about. So if they want to look at from an economical perspective, taking away those protections, destroying the environment, why would people want to go visit and spend money or spend their time and vacations in those places? So again, just protecting nature is good for us, good for the plants and animals, good for us, helping us fight climate change, but also good for the local economy as well.
Well said.
Absolutely.
Well said. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of these amazing solutions and all the hard work that you're putting into Cactus to Cloud, the coalition movement you've built around creating the Chuckwalla National Monument. It's clear that through hard work and dedicated community involvement and working across the board with different stakeholders, that you can protect your home and what you care about. And with that, is there anything that you wanted to add that maybe we didn't ask throughout the interview that you find important to leave our listeners with a message, perhaps?
Yeah, I think, a good takeaway, if I may, would be for people to realize just how important their own individual voice is. And also collectively, these are our local representatives, and they should be working for us. So I guess my ask or my recommendation would be for people at home listening right now to contact their local representative and just tell them exactly what, priorities are for them and what they would like for their public lands. And, continue to advocate for your public lands and other matters that are important to you. Because the thing is, like, once public lands are gone or destroyed, they're gone forever. It's not something that's going to magically, come back. And in addition to that, I would say, there's a lot of words being thrown around right now, right? As far as like what makes a good citizen and what doesn't. But I think, in my personal view, a true patriot is a person who does what they can to protect the land that they say that they love.
It's our obligation. It's not a right.
Right.
It's our obligation to be responsible for the land. That's patriotism.
Correct.
Well, thank you so much for being a wonderful patriot.
Yeah.
And also just making the space for voices that have been overlooked and
for life overlooked across all beings. We have to make an inclusive space and be a voice for wildlife.
Yes.
Because they can't speak up. We have to vote for them and make sure that other people understand that, bringing in those inclusive voices. Yep. Thank you for doing that.
What advice would you give to our listeners who may not feel welcome in this space?
The conservation space.
In the conservation space?
Yeah, in the conservation space.
So I think, one would be, put yourself out there. It's not going to be easy, but it's definitely very worth it. And I think, although it may be intimidating, and it is definitely worth it, you'll find people that are willing to help you along the way. You'll find people that are interested in what you have to say. And I think, just continue to be true and genuine to yourself is also very important. So yeah, I would say just in general, if conservation is something that you're interested, please do it. Please educate yourself. Please, as far as like what areas would interest you, educate yourself as to like where to start, where to go, and just knowing the different organizations that are working in your community or maybe in your region that are working towards the goals that you would be interested in. But yeah, put yourself out there.
Great message. What are some ways that our listeners can get involved with Cactus to Cloud?
Yeah, so I would say a good one would be to follow us on Instagram at CactusToCloud. And that's usually where we post everything that we're doing, whether it's an activity online or in person. You'll find it all there. And it's also a good way to, either find out about any volunteer opportunities or opportunities to, use your voice and advocate for public lands, but also opportunities to like, hey, you want to join us on a hike, you want to join us on a start party, and workshops that we may be offering. So yeah, Instagram, Cactus to Cloud, or on our webpage at CactusToCloud.org, but probably our Instagram page is usually where we post most of the information.
Great.
Yeah, amazing.
Wow, I'm so excited for this collaboration, and maybe we can host a Planet People and Cactus to Cloud nature walk in Chuckwalla sometime.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we'd love to.
We're looking to do some more nature walks soon once we get this season off and running, and that would be really fun to just bring the Planet People community together with desert folks and Cactus to Cloud and see what magic we can make.
Oh, we would love that. Yeah, definitely let us know. We would love to have you guys out there and show you how beautiful it is.
Great.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being here and joining us on the show today, Sendy. This has been a wonderful discussion.
Yeah, well, thank you both for the opportunity and for listening and for your podcast and helping educate community members about the importance of, protecting the planet. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you for being a planet person.
Yes.
Desert Defender.
Desert Defenders unite.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you.
Yay.
Well, thank you very much.
Cool. That's a wrap.
Perfect.
So we are excited to kind of introduce this anxiety into action component here that we end all of our episodes in the season with. And we highlight the importance of turning that despair into action, right? And the key to despair is taking that hopeful and inspired action. What does that mean? It means getting involved in your local community with a nonprofit like Cactus to Cloud, signing up for naturalist courses offered through California Fish and Wildlife, for example, or joining a coalition near you to get involved on a wildlife campaign, designating a national monument like Sendy and Colin so graciously did with Chuckwalla National Monument. And if you are thinking of making a coalition to get designated for a natural space near you, then this is your sign to get involved and rally other like-minded people in your network to make a difference today. And that's really what we're about here at Planet People, is involving stewardship and advocacy as part of your daily routine. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Planet People. We are thrilled to have you as part of our community of wildlifers who care about protecting the planet for future generations to enjoy.
We hope that by listening, you feel inspired to connect with nature and become a steward of the planet by getting involved and taking action with your local community conservation organizations. Until next time, stay positive, Planet People.
This episode was produced by Natalie Jean Cibel, Coral Carson, and Hugh Carr. Directed and edited by Coral Carson. Theme song by Hugh Carr under the artist name Flama. Thank you, team.